recording now. So you know what's funny because you mentioned the camera is what's funny is like nowadays webcams they like really don't have because everyone's like cell phones are so good and like you can't
Yeah.
really. It's funny because webcams are so like bad compared to the camera that we have on our phones. It's really hard. It's like the one I got is like the Logitech and it's like 150 bucks or something, and it's the like pretty much as good as it gets, really. But it's just, I don't know, not many people do them because webcams are kind of dated now in a way.
I know.
Um,
Could have done this
but
on my phone.
so today I'm talking with Nathan Skousen. He's energy storage guy. I'm really, really excited to talk to you because there's so much misinformation out there about batteries and storage and all that kind of stuff. And you're the type of person, or you're the person that most of the people I trust tell me to go to if I ever have questions about batteries. And so I'm excited to hopefully give people more knowledge and also just see what lessons you probably have learned in your journey here. So thank you so much for talking on this thing. And can you tell us a little bit about like how you got to where you are, like what your background is, sales, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, yeah, it sales. I went to college for a couple semesters, and realized, I didn't really have, I didn't want to be a doctor, a lawyer, anything like that. That I specifically needed a degree for. Got a job selling to alumni, just trying to get them to donate money to the school, and then realized I really liked sales, and from there sold Dish Network over the phone, and then got my life insurance license, sold life insurance, like cash value life insurance policies and company benefits, stuff like that. And then worked for GoDaddy in their sales department and kind of worked my way up to what's called executive accounts. The top spenders at GoDaddy get their own account rep. And then you work on growing your portfolio, getting them to spend more money, do more stuff with internet SEO, and help them out there. Then from there, I did that in Arizona. And then from there, went with my brother in law to New York to open the Vivint office in Albany, New York. So kind of funny. I moved from Arizona to New York to do solar, like next to the Canadian border. I think they shut that office down because like 4 months out of the year, there's just too much snow to do anything. Um, and then moved back to where I was born, Yuba City, California, Northern California, um, to with Vivint still in an office there, and then went to Ion, and then we created our own company and started working with installers. The installers we worked with, they're no longer around anymore. And then we just started basically out of necessity. We didn't want to start that fast, but we got a warehouse, trucks, got crews put together, um, and started our own installation company. Because the sales company we always had someone with their license as one of the owners. So we were a sales company using an EPC, but we had our own license. So it was pretty easy transition to do our own installs because we just had to find the crews, and we just basically we knew a lot of people who'd been installing solar for a while, so got that going. Um, and we
So
called it.
I apologize for interrupting. What's the timeline like? Like when you how long were you uh like what year did you go to college? How long were you working in other
Yeah,
industries before you got into solar? And then like what time frame was it when you went to New York for to
yeah.
join Vivint?
So I got my insurance license when I was 18. Um, so I'm like young for my grade, so I was in college at 17, and then got my insurance license because my uncle owns an insurance company. Um, so sold insurance for a couple of years, and then moved to GoDaddy, or moved to Arizona to work for GoDaddy when I was 20. Worked there for 6 years, 5 or 6 years, and then um, Vivint for like 3 years, Ion for a year, and then we've been doing SunStor since 2017, so about 5 years. Um, And that was one of the big reasons why we started the company, is because it was when NIM 2.0 came out with PG&E,
Yeah.
and we were just noticing that companies either didn't understand or didn't care that it wasn't the same anymore. You can't just build 100% systems and tell the customer they're good, not going to have a true bill, just because of the time of use and when that trade of energy happens. So that's when we realized batteries are going to be super important. This was back in 2017, and so we named the company SunStor, short for Sun Storage, and really put a focus on batteries. In the beginning, there weren't a lot of outages around here in California, so it's specifically just they were the end phase little 1.2 kilowatt hour batteries. We do, you know, two, three, four of those, um, just for the time of use power shifting. And
Mhm.
then when the PSPS program started with PG&E, that's when, you know, they shut off the power anytime the wind it's really windy, so they don't start a fire. Um, just demand for generators and batteries went through the roof, um, and started, and then we shifted to backup. You know, having the batteries for backup as well as time of use. Um, Started with Sonnen, and then just the more, you know, I dug into it, the more we learned about it. We had mall locations at that time. This was before COVID. They all shut down when COVID hit. Um, but you know, so I'd spend a lot of time just the malls are open from 9 till 9. So probably like a year of watching like 10 hours a day of YouTube of batteries, battery installations, how they work, spec sheets. So a ton of hours into really studying it all. And then yeah, we did Sonnen batteries, and then I met Everett Brewer at stores, started doing those. We've done a lot of power walls for other companies. A lot of these companies have big backlogs of their batteries, and so if you're a company who knows how to install them, you know, you can come in and help them get those batteries installed. So we did a lot of power walls, um, a few LG chems, uh, a lot of Fortress batteries with the solar converter, and that's kind of our main ones that we do now is Fortress and a new one called Palm Cube, and we can kind of get into that. But
Yeah.
that's kind of the background
So
and how I kind of learned all this.
So I like it that you're self-taught. I mean, you basically, when you were working, you were learning about something that you saw was important. And I find interesting about you mentioned like the transition in 2017 where people were not adjusting to the new net metering in California, and it seems like that's kind of going to be repeating itself
Mm,
whenever this NEM 3.0 gets rolled
yeah.
out. Even no matter what happens, I think it's going to be obviously worse than it has been,
Mhm.
and not enough solar pros take the time to learn and kind of understand what's actually happening. So your focus is on the battery and the. I mean, you're the battery, you're the storage guy. Like you understand the importance. Can you give like what do you think is what what about batteries do you think solar reps need to know that they don't currently know? Like the average solar sales rep who's in these groups, they're knocking on doors and they're just selling solar based like almost exclusively on savings. Like what is it about batteries that they kind of don't take the time to grasp, do you think?
Um, I'd say I get the most questions from other people on how to size the batteries. I think now everybody knows the import, like why batteries can help. You know why they either need to build 110, 115% offset in order to not get a true up bill, or throw in a battery. I think people understand now, like, hey, when you're producing your energy at a low time of, you know, at an off peak rate, they're buying it from you at an off peak rate. It's no longer a kilowatt for kilowatt hour trade. It's, hey, when did you give me this kilowatt hour? I'm going to give you that amount of money for credit. When you draw it back, we're going to, you know, reduce your credit by what we would charge you. And it's just, you're kind of, you're buying high and selling low, and you don't want to do that. So I think everyone understands where a battery helps in that way now. NEM 2.0 has been out for a long time, what, 4 years? Um, and so everybody grasped that, I believe. The hard part is sizing them. Um, it seems like everybody wants this equation, like, hey, what size battery do I need for a 6 kilowatt solar installer? And there really isn't one. I mean, there's been some accounts where they may need a small solar system and a large battery. Some a very large system and a small battery. Um, you really have to talk through it and see, hey, what do you want to power when the power goes down? Um, how long are you going to be powering those things, and 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 sizing that with the system. So it's not an easy, like, there's tools like Enphase's sizing tool where you can go in and say, hey, I want 2 refrigerators and AC, and they kind of recommend the battery size, but that tool doesn't know how many amps your refrigerator draws. I mean, once you start really diving into this and doing load calculations on these houses, you'll see, sometimes there's this big, huge refrigerator and it uses 4 amps. And then you go to the next house and there's a small refrigerator that uses 7 amps. So you can't just say, oh, I have 2 refrigerators, because you could be off, you know, by half. You could really, the refrigerators use 10 amps and Enphase's sizing tool is assuming 5. So you could be off by a lot. Um, so I'd say reps just need to know how to do load calculations. If you've ever had to do them for companies when they needed a D rate, that's when you take a picture of all the appliance nameplates that will show how many amps and watts that appliance draws, um, and calculating, okay, well, this is how many total amps I need continuous, and this is how much I need peak in order to turn on certain devices like well pumps or air conditioning, and really taking the time to calculate that all specifically for that customer. Um, because if you're not doing that, that's even worse than designing a system without their usage. You need their usage, to design solar, so you know how much to offset and everything. Same thing with batteries. You need to have the nameplates of every appliance that they want to run, in order to size it correctly, or else you're building a system without usage. It's the same kind of equivalence there. Um,
Wouldn't it also like impact the savings numbers that you're projecting to the customer? Like, how is there any proposal software out there that kind of like successfully calculates batteries and what they're able to do as far as the net metering in the local utilities?
yeah, it's really really hard to say, like, hey, this battery, because it's shifting, your kilowatt hours from times that they're low to times that they're high. It's super hard to tell them how much money that's going to save. I never go into, if you didn't have this battery, your true up bill would be this with PG&E with this, 100% system. But if you do have this battery, I'm going to eliminate that true up bill, because you have no idea. It depends on when they use that power. Their shifts at work could change, and now that's completely going to change these numbers you gave them. So I tell people right off the bat, like, listen, solar saves you a lot of money. Getting a battery obviously costs money. It's going to cut into your savings for sure. Um, but the days of building 105% system and having only a solar bill, those days are over. You're going to have a solar bill. You know, there's always a second cost now, and that's what I explained. That second cost is either going to be extra solar panels to make up for that difference. You got to produce more when the power is cheap to actually get what you need back. So you got to give them more than you take. So that's an extra cost. So there's always an extra cost on top of 100%. Either more panels, either you just do 100% and pay that true up bill, or you buy a battery. So there's always a second cost now. And when you explain to the customer, like, look, this second cost of the battery is going to be another $90 a month or whatever it is, um, well, even if that true up bill was only going to be $70 a month and the battery is more expensive, what would you rather do? Would you rather keep paying PG&E? Because we've been sitting here talking, for 45 minutes about how much you hate PG&E. You hate them so much that you still want to be with them 50% of the time, because if you don't get a battery, you're playing by their rules, and you are still locked into whatever they want to do. Yeah, you have this NEM, but what happens if they change off peak rate to 10 cents and on peak rate to 40 cents? You're going to go buy another, 16 solar panels that don't fit on your roof? Are you just going to pay this extra, um, true up bill that keeps going up? Are you going to add a battery? Probably going to be cash only because you missed out on your solar loan to add it in now. Or do you want to just add it in now, future proof your system, because they can make off peak rate 1 penny and on peak rate $1, and you don't care because your battery is a shield to that meter. With the NIMS the way they are now, you don't want to spin the meter backwards. You don't want to spin the meter forwards. You don't want to touch that meter. And that's what this battery does, is it keeps all the overproduction into the battery. When you need it back, it puts it back into your loads. The great thing about California is, especially when you're looking at like 25 years, you're like, hey, listen, solar only is going to save you whatever it is, 85% compared to PG&E over 25 years. Solar in the battery is going to save you 75%. Like, so what? You're still saving 75%, and you don't have to play by their rules. You don't have to, you're totally independent. You don't need them anymore. Grid goes down, your solar still works. How mad are you going to be when you're shut down and you're looking at these solar panels you bought that aren't doing nothing when you need it the most? So just giving them in that mindset of like, listen, there's going to be an added cost, and that's either more solar panels, a true up bill, or a battery. The battery is the only one that you actually control, because you can get more solar panels now, and if they make that delta between the two rates even more, now you got to get more. So what are you going to do? Buy more solar panels every 2 years? Um, so it just, when you explain it in that way and kind of explain, listen, this is going to cut into your savings, but you'll be a lot happier. You'll have a much, you'll have this energy independence. We call it a full system and a half system. Like, hey, do you want a half system or do you want a full system? The half system, you still need PG&E half the time. It's dark half the hours of the year. Or we can get you set up with a full system, do it right. And
Yeah,
when
it's
you look at it that way, it kind of becomes like, hey, maybe this is something we should do with the battery. I will say though, like 90% of our battery customers are in areas where they're getting shut off of that. They're not just in the normal subdivisions where power hasn't gone out for 6 years, or power only goes out if someone crashes into a pole or something like that. That's 90% of our customers who get the batteries. They need something. They either need a generator or a battery. So they have to do something because their food going bad 3 times a year is much more expensive than either of those. So, and then getting into, now they're looking at, okay, the cost of solar and a generator, or the cost of solar and a battery. Where a generator might look nice compared to solar up front, but they are extremely, extremely expensive to run, maintain. It's like a car. You got to change the oil. It's an engine inside of that thing. You got to change the oil. You got to keep up on it. It runs every month, because if it just sits there idle, it's going to break. There's a lot that goes into a generator, and not to mention, most of them are natural gas, and PG&E here in California, natural gas has increased. It increases way more than electricity does. I think it's gone up like 300% since COVID. So they're running this generator, and it costs $200-300 a day is what their PG&E bill spikes for that day or 2 or 3 that they had to run the generator. And
wow.
if your power goes out 10 times a year, you're looking at another $2,000-3,000 every single year. Well, after 10 years, you just spent 30 grand on fuel. 15 to 17 grand on your generator installation. You're like 50K in 10 years. I could have got you a battery for 30, minus the tax credit, that, or maybe 40 grand to do the same exact amount of power that generator will do, minus the tax credit. you're cheaper than the generator by year 7 or 8, assuming
Yeah.
their power goes out all the time and they have super high natural gas bills.
Well, especially for someone who's looking to go solar anyways, right? I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
benefits of the battery are more than just those circumstances when people run into trouble, but obviously that's one of the main reasons that people even talk or mention a battery is because they're interested in that independence aspect.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that you said that I don't think I've ever heard any solar. I've never heard a solar person talk about like, oh yeah, I mean generators are cheaper, but like the cost to run the generator is like this much money, and that's something that a lot of solar pros maybe avoid on purpose or avoid just because they aren't knowledgeable about that.
Yeah,
And
and it's either going to cost you a ton of money to run it if your power goes out all the time, or you're going to buy this thing and it's never going to turn on. What a waste of money. And I've talked to people who have 10, 12-year-old generators that, they call us because we're a Generac dealer looking to replace it. It's never even ran for 12 years, 15 years. They've never used it once, and they need to replace it because it's not working anymore. So
and they
it,
probably don't find out it's not working until
yeah,
the
until they
worst
need it.
possible
And
time.
they're well out of warranty by then. And so they haven't been keeping up with it. They haven't been doing yearly maintenance on it. Um, yeah, you're either going to spend a ton of money if you use it, or you're never going to use it at all. And it was just a complete waste of money. And yeah, when you're buying solar anyways, like, so you're going to double buy the fuel because you're buying the solar panels. That's fuel right there for a battery. And it just makes a lot of sense. It's really easy. Someone looking to go solar generator versus solar battery. Um, it's super expensive to have a gen.
Yeah, and that's once again that's something that I think people I think the solar pros are so used to selling with complete focus on the savings aspect that they sometimes if a customer even expresses that concern, they kind of push them or recommend the generator instead of the battery just because they know that that's a cheaper adder that they're going to be able to put on the proposal and still save more likely that they're going to still be able to save the customer money. um, that is very just good information. My question for you is, what about the like regarding the batteries? How do you what is the lifespan like for the batteries, and like what is it that solar professionals should be talking to the customers, and what expectations should they be giving them when we're talking about 10, 15 years down the line?
Yeah, so it depends. I'd say the most on the chemistry of the battery. You're going to see lithium-ion, lithium iron phosphate. Those are the two popular ones. Companies like Stores, Sonnen, Enphase, PalmCube, Fortress, they all have LFP, lithium iron phosphate. This lasts a lot longer, a lot more cycles than um, lithium ion. And then
So
it's
what's a
also
couple examples of lithium ion?
uh, LG Chem, Powerwall. I think they're all going to go LFP though.
Mhm.
Um, they just will. But you're looking at it lasting, depending on conditions, which I'll get into that, but anywhere from like 6 to 9,000 cycles, you know, and you don't cycle a battery every day. I'd say our average customer probably goes a half a cycle a day. A cycle is when you charge fully to zero and you recharge back to 100. So a lot of these batteries are depleting, to about 50%, recharging, 50% the next day, recharging. So took 2 days to do one cycle. Um, so they last a long time. If you do the math on that, you're looking at 18
20
to
to 30
25
years.
years,
Yeah.
25, 30 years even. And then it's also conditions, right? These are conditions at like 70 degrees, 80 degrees. Extreme cold and extreme heat do shorten the life of any chemistry of a battery. And also how fast you charge and discharge it. So I tell people it's like a car. One person can make their car last 20 years. Another person could start, blowing head gaskets in 3 years. It depends on how rough you are on that car. how fast are you accelerating and decelerating? You're going to wear out your brakes. You're going to wear the thing out faster. It's the same thing with the battery. So conditions matter as well. Um, but we've always only sold LFP for the cycle length and the safety. You're not going to have to worry about thermal runaway issues. They have videos where puncture tests of lithium-ion versus LFP, and catches on fire. What if you crash into the battery in your garage on accident or something? You don't want something that's going to catch on fire. So, even some places require pylons in front of the batteries if they're a certain chemistry, kind of like water heaters do, or they'll be, on top of a cement block so you don't crash into it. There's some counties that are starting to require that. So LFP, I mean, it's non-toxic as well. So it's just especially when you're talking green and green energy, it's like, hey, one chemistry is non-toxic, non-harmful, a lot easier to dispose when this thing is dead.
So this is a question that I probably, because I'm not necessarily a solar sales guy. Like I sell solar, and when my YouTube videos actually bring me leads from all over the country, and I talk to people. And one of the biggest things that I talk to people about is they always want to go off the grid. Oh, I want to be off, like I just want to be off the grid. I'm so determined to get independence. And from what I have gathered, because obviously I'm not an expert, off the grid is nearly impossible, and if it is possible, it's like the biggest pain in the butt ever. It's not ever worth it. How do you kind of explain to customers, like when someone says to you like, oh, well, I want a battery because I want to be off the grid? How do you explain that to them?
Um, yeah, so we get that a lot too. So we just kind of explain, like, listen, it's not like you're gonna come pay PG&E to pull the wire out, take their meter, and disconnect you literally from the grid. But if that's something you want, we can design this system and the batteries. Let's just assume you're building a cabin somewhere and there is no power. Obviously people do that. People have been doing that for decades. There's a way to size solar and batteries to make sure that that house has power through all the seasons. And yeah, so we can design your house as if it was this cabin off grid, get you enough solar, get you enough storage, get you enough, power in that hybrid inverter to actually run all your loads, so you don't have to worry about things tripping out because the battery can't support it. And then two things you can do. You can either just shut off your main breaker, and if there's ever a time when you blow through that battery and you need PG&E, hey, you can go out and turn on your main breaker and you have power, or just leave it on and kind of know that PG&E is the backup to your backup. And Enphase in their app is really cool. They have the energy independence. Dude, I can't. They have the energy independence score. Let me see. How do I feel like I'm so technically dumb today. I couldn't find this link for our call, and
It's okay. It's part of getting older. I
yeah. Um,
I
so
yeah, I was gonna say I think I know everything, and then once a day technology makes me feel like I'm a dinosaur. But so I mean, the way you explained it is it's definitely possible. It's just
yeah,
a lot. It's just basically a custom system, and it's
yeah,
probably going to
yeah,
be
and
a lot more expensive.
oh yeah, yeah. Enphase has in their app. It's really cool. They have like an energy independence score every single day. We have a few customers who hit like 90% every day, so they basically haven't spun their meter. And we can design a system to where you will never touch PG&E. You'll never spin it backwards. You'll never spin it forwards. But it's super expensive. So once you kind of go over that, it's like, hey, this is what you want, but a lot of times, what we want doesn't actually fit our budget.
So,
The
and when you
house
say
is
super expensive, do you mean like 2 to 3 times more expensive, or even
oh
more?
yeah, yeah, like 3 times, 3 to 4 times more expensive than what their solar only would be, and like double of what solar and battery would be, to do a hybrid situation, because it gets really expensive trying to give them the amount of power they need, and you got to stack a lot of batteries, or a lot of hybrid inverters, and still cheaper than PG&E. Don't get me wrong; they're gonna still save money. That's what's so awesome about California. Um, I could probably roll a house into their freaking solar loan, and it's still cheaper than PG&E. Um, it's like, hey, we'll get you solar on your house, and we'll buy your neighbor's house too. Just package it all in the loan, and
I
your
love
payments will be less than
I love it.
PG&E.
That's only a solar guy would be like, that's what's so awesome about PG&E in California is, $400 electric bills.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
the one of
Um,
the things about
so
being
yeah,
in
it
this
just gets really
industry.
expensive because you got to think, if you want to build a system or off grid or anything like that, you got to remember the winter time. You see these graphs of what it produces. Everyone's always pulling a lot of power in the winter. So you got to build like 150, 160%. It's a lot of overage and a lot of waste for the summer, but you have to do it to get you that power that you need in the winter, enough to charge the batteries, run the loads, and so it just gets, really expensive. Um, I'd
Yeah,
say
it
on
can.
average, like definitely over 100 grand. Because they're gonna
And
need
then
a
especially
lot.
in other parts of the country where like California, 100 grand is, like you said, it's nothing compared to their house payment or their
Yeah,
house. Houses are on average, what, 700, 600, seven hundred
yeah,
thousand in some of the cheaper parts of California. And then that's probably a little bit high. But compared to other places around the country where 100 grand, you can get a house for that
yeah, yeah.
almost.
So
But it is interesting because off the grid is probably, I don't think I've ever realized how many people like that's the reason they're most interested in solar. Because it's typically either they're looking to save money or they're pissed off at their utility and they want that independence
yeah,
aspect. And they always, I want to be off the grid. I don't like this. I don't like what's going on. And most, I think, solar reps don't touch that with a 10-foot pole. They just kind of pivot and kind of push them towards either solar with batteries or even just solar, because they get them to talking about savings. And then, well, if you want to save money, the easiest way to save money is just to keep it simple.
yeah.
Uh, what is this? Because you're obviously a storage guy, you're obviously very passionate. What are the circumstances where you're talking to someone and you don't recommend a battery?
If they just if so, like, I have solar in my house. I don't have a battery. Our power's never gone out. The the system, it overproduces anyways. Um, I'd say when there's people in an area, usually it's just like your cookie cutter subdivisions. Power never goes out. They could care less about independence. They're not that like, oh, America, I want to. The Russians can hack the power plants and everything turns off, and I'm going to be just fine. They don't have that like spirit in them, or whatever you want to call it. They just don't freaking care. They just want to save money. Um, they show like no interest in the battery, and I let them know like, hey, then you don't really need one at all. Let's design the system. You still need to buy extra solar panels. The days of 100% offset, not having a true bill are over. So we still need to adjust for the new NIM. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of times, and we just ask them, what are you more interested in, the savings or the independence? And people are more interested in savings. They're not doing the battery.
Good. That sounds like it's similar to the way I've always handled it, which is like
Yeah,
they express interest. It's like, okay, well, like I know you're interested in this, but are you interested enough where it's gonna take away your savings? Oh, no, 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 I don't care. Power can go out once a month. I'd rather save money. And that's definitely interesting. What I want to know, I don't even like, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but what's funny is I'm confident that I'm more knowledgeable than probably 80% of solar people, just because I talk about solar on
mhm.
this podcast a lot. But what is it? when people are concerned about blackouts, and they're not necessarily concerned about the power going out, they're concerned more about like the world's ending, my power is going to be out for multiple days. What, and I think there is kind of some misconceptions where I've talked to people that think that the solar can recharge the battery even if the grid's down, and then I've talked to people where they think the solar cannot recharge the battery if the grid's down. What are the circumstances where that is possible, or that solar in a battery
Yeah,
would be helpful in that?
I think I think where that confusion comes from is I believe the first Powerwall wouldn't, or it wasn't very good at it at keeping solar up if the power went down. So if the power went down, you were battery only. I believe that's where that comes from because every install we've ever done, Powerwalls, I mean, all the batteries and all the battery companies I've talked to, of course it keeps the solar up. That's part of what the battery does. So um, these inverters have rapid shutdowns, so they need to sense power to make power. It's part of the safety. Grid goes down, your inverters shut off. So what the battery has to do is send a signal to those inverters and basically trick them. It's like, hey, we got the 240 voltage back. We got the frequency back. The grid's back on, and then the batteries are so the battery basically tells or tricks the inverters into thinking that the battery is the grid, and then turns them back on. That's that's half the battery is making sure that your solar works. So now, yeah, they all recharge the battery during the day. Um, the issue comes into, it's not like a laptop. Imagine a laptop, if you could run so many programs on it, you could actually discharge the laptop even though it's plugged in. Um, with a battery, you can do that. So you can be taking more, and there's just not left enough. There's not enough left over to charge the battery. But typically, when the power's out, especially if it's going to be long, and we kind of let them know this, like, hey, you got to go into conserve mode. You can't just. We can make all your plugs and all your lights work in every room. That doesn't mean that when the power goes out, you want to be running all your plugs and all your lights in every room at the same time. And then you got to especially be careful after the sun sets. But yeah, I mean, I see it on the app and everything. You can go indefinitely. As long as you're getting enough solar to recharge that battery. So I let customers know, like, yes, this will last, but let's say the power's out because of a fire. That's a big reason why power goes out in California, and there's so much smoke in the air. Obviously, your solar is not going to be recharging that battery. Um, and then you got to think, like, hey, your lights and plugs. If you just have one TV, a router and stuff, and you're not using your vacuum while the power's out, or running your microwave. Typically, lights and plugs are going to use 1-2 kilowatt hours a day. Each fridge is going to use between 1 and 2 a day. And you can kind of control the rest of it. You can control if you turn on that microwave or not. You can control how long you're watching the TV. So typically, like a 10 kilowatt hour battery, you can count on 2-3 days without solar recharging it. And with solar recharging it, I mean,
You're pretty much good, which is nice.
it just gets really hard in the winter. So in the winter, I do notice a lot of our systems, even when the grid's on, you know, they're taking every bit of power that the solar is creating, and there's not even enough power to charge the battery. Um, and the grids now all these battery, like if there's a storm coming or something like that, you can always charge your battery from the grid and get prepared
Mhm.
for it. They all have like storm watt. They all call it kind of a different thing. Um, but yeah, and
Yeah.
it does get hard in the winter to produce enough power. But that's when grid's on and they're using their normal life. When the power goes out, they would typically be a lot more careful about how fast they're draining that battery, especially in the winter.
Yeah, and I guess the things too about it is people have most of the time, if there's a big storm coming or there's something that you're worried about, like I guess probably one of the only examples I can think of would be like an earthquake where maybe something happens and you're out of power for when you there's and for a
Yeah.
couple days and you have no control over that or you have no knowledge that it's coming. So most of the time if you have notice that a hurricane or a tornado or whatever, like Texas last year when they had snow and it pretty much like
Yeah, right.
turned the whole state into chaos. Like when those things happen, you have an idea that they're coming and you're able to plan or at least keep track of how full your battery is. You're not checking it after it's already happened. Um,
Like
I have a
today,
question.
someone, I just looked on the app.
Mhm.
So his battery discharges to like 30% every night, and he's at 62% right now, and it's charging. It's 12 o'clock, so he'll probably be at 100% by like 2 o'clock.
Very cool. I mean, that's huge. That's something that a obviously when people think of a battery, that's something that they always think of, and they want it to, obviously, even if it's not off the grid, they want to know that they're not, they want to feel like they're not reliant on the grid completely, or if the grid goes
Yeah.
down, they're going to be happy. And like I said, some I've heard and I've talked to people that believe, and I wasn't sure about it, so obviously there's probably a lot of people out there that didn't know, and that's something that's really really important for anyone who's even considering selling a battery, which should be most solar reps. I have a question from you that's, or for you, that's kind of more based on the fact that you've had a lot of experience with the different brands and the different products, and you've
Yeah.
have kind of more insight into how they compare. My question is, from like a customer service perspective, what companies have you really seen like superior customer service, and what companies are maybe a little bit harder to get a hold of? Like when it comes to recommending batteries, I feel like that's something that is going to be important to homeowners, and it's definitely something that people might want to have, like something that they can talk to, but even if they've never sold a specific battery or brand before.
Yeah. So one of the best is stores with Everett Brewer. He will personally help you out. They've We've had nothing but praises for them. Kind of all of them have been really good. Enphase, it's a bigger company, so you're going to get kind of treated like it's a bigger company. Here's a ticket, or you got to do this process, or well, first we got to make sure all of this doesn't work before. It's like, hey, we're telling you, we know it's going to, but you got to go through all their steps. Where some of these other battery companies, you can just text Everett, text the CEO, and he'll get it handled for you. Or I'm sure it's not going to be like that forever because they're growing like crazy. Um, but they've all been really good. I'd say the one that's the hardest to do anything with is Sonnen, which was kind of a big letdown for us because it's by far the most expensive battery,
Hmm.
by far. And
So
it's
even
like,
more challenging than Tesla?
oh, we've only done the labor for those
Okay.
for other companies. So after we get done and it passes inspection, that was never our customer. So I have no idea how that is. I haven't heard great things at all though. Um,
The reason I ask is because all I've heard is their long and lengthy install process, and their wait lists, and people want to. They obviously are backlogged on the front end. I can only imagine that they're similarly on the back end. And once again, it goes to what you're talking about with just these giant companies that are huge and doing a lot of big things. But when they're doing that, it's very hard for them to deliver the small things, which is important to someone if
and
they're buying
and people
something.
going batteries, like I just sold one the other day, and I told them like, hey, like to me, I want to be surprised that this takes 6 months before you're turned on. Batteries there's a lot more to it. Some places you have to get different style. We've had some where we had to get engineering done on the wall to make sure that the battery could be on the wall. And this was after it was like we get the permit, we install it, then they come to the inspection. They're like, "Oh no, where's your engineering for this wall?" It's like, well, obviously you can hold it. It's been here for a month. Um, but and then inventory as well. We just did an install last week. It's going to be two Enphase 10s. CDs had the batteries for weeks and weeks, and I've been seeing them there. We go to do the install, and someone bought like the last four the day before. So his solar's all in, his switch is all in, and everything. It's like, hey, it's going to be like 3-4 weeks before your battery comes in, before I can buy it. But as long as you prepare them for that, and they know, They're not going to get mad. Um, you just have to prepare them for that and be like, look, it's supply and demand right now. Everybody wants these things. Um, it's not going to take 6 months because of anything we're doing. It's going to take 6 months because it's taking 6 months for everybody because no one can get their hands on an in-phase battery right now because no one has
because
them. So
the world's
yeah, the
crazy,
world
and
hasn't caught up. And yeah,
these are
so
not exactly something that Joe down the street can just make out of
exactly.
thin air.
So that that's when the less popular batteries like Stores, Palm Cube, Fortress, those are a lot easier, a whole lot easier to get a hold of. Um, so just setting the right expectations. If you're selling a battery, just let them know, like, look, sometimes it takes a year. Um,
Yeah.
we've
Oh,
had that happen before.
and
Uh,
hopefully people are doing that regardless with like, I mean, that's one of the biggest things you see with people that sell solar and they have a high cancellation rate is just because people, for some reason, they have an impression that, oh yeah, I just signed up for solar, it'll be on my roof in 2 weeks, and then they don't realize that it's a longer process
yeah,
typically, and then they start to get upset because they feel like everybody's behind
yeah,
and they were
and
lied to, and they
yeah, as
usually
long
don't
as
have a
you
problem with
explain
it. You
it,
just have to prepare
yeah,
them.
yeah, as long as you explain it, prepare them. Like, look, you know, it could take 3 4 months. What happens if Murphy Law happens with your account? And at every single point in the process, which there are a lot of points in the process, something went wrong. And that happens to some customers, and then, what happens if we submit the permit and it's been 2 weeks, because I review all of our CADs before we submit the permit. And I'll be honest with them and say, what if I missed something? What if I totally missed something? I should have had our CAD guy change it. We submit for permit. We wait 2 3 weeks and then they come back and reject it because I messed something up. Human error. It happens. And then now that's 2 3 weeks down the drain and we got to start over again. Um, what happens if you need an MPU and the soonest we can get the shut off date is 3 months from now? Well, we're not doing anything we're just sitting here doing nothing for 3 months. What happens if one of the guys forgets a sticker and we fail the inspection and then we got to come back? So there it can happen to where every single point in the process something gets messed up. Um, and it takes a long time to get installed. We've had it happen to where that happens with some people. We got to redo the permit a couple times. We failed, and then when it finally gets to install, I think my record is like three. I've had somebody rained out 3 times. They schedule the install, it's raining. Schedule the install, it's raining. Schedule the install, it's raining. And then it's like, so as long as you prepare them for all these things, it takes two things: preparing them for it, and then either you yourself as a sales rep or an account manager, if that company has one, you just have to call them and update them. They do not care what's happening as long as you're updating them. You can call them and say, hey, I messed up. We messed up on your CAD. We totally drew it wrong. It got rejected. Sorry, it's going to be another 2 weeks. Hey man, thanks for letting me know. That's cool. We all mess up sometimes, you know. Or just that phone call of just, hey, it's been a week since I called you. Just want to let you know nothing's changed since last week. There is no new news to give you. I'm just calling you to tell you that there is no new news to tell you. And people like those phone calls. Um,
Yeah, they really do. And there's, I think some companies have a, a miscommunication regarding who's responsible for that. I mean,
yes,
whether it's the sales rep or it's once the sales rep closes, they feel like they've handed it off to the project management, the install team, and the customer doesn't get that, and that's where deals fall through. And I personally think sales reps need to do a better job of keeping on top of everything because I think it's easy for any one person to drop the ball on something. And if we have more
yes,
people that are kind of overseeing it, but they both kind of like on the project management side and the sales side, if they're both on top of it, they can each kind of in a way hold each other accountable so they know that things are happening when they should be happening. And if
yeah,
they don't know, if it's not happening, they know why and the customer knows why. Because that's probably, I mean, big with all a lot of these companies that have sales reps that are so focused on the next sale and they're so focused on signing, and then they're signing 15 deals a month but they have 6 or 7 cancellations, and
yeah.
it's because of things like that. So I have a question for you that's kind of not really unrelated, but do you have any thoughts about the Ford F-150 Lightning? And the reason I ask is because I'm sure you've seen. Have you seen the commercial?
Yeah, yeah. No.
So at
I
the end of the commercial, where they basically like plug your house into the truck and the power goes out and you're able to uh, power your house with your electric vehicle, which sounds good in theory. My question is, have you looked into it? Like, how? What are
Yeah,
your thoughts about that
I
as
think it's
a
awesome.
whole?
Um, I think it's really cool. Obviously, there's the issue of what happens if I'm on vacation and my power goes out. All my food's still going to go bad because I have the truck with me on vacation. So you don't have that benefit to it of like, hey, this thing's going to work whether you're home or not. But it's incredibly powerful. Um, I don't have the specs memory, but it is very powerful. And for the price, I've been kind of joking about it, but I'm almost serious. Like, hey, why can't we package this thing into a loan, call it a battery with wheels? Hey, this is a backup battery for solar. It can be charged by solar. It can discharge into the loads. It just has this unique feature. Some of them have little features here and there. This features it's got an engine and wheels and you can drive it around. Um, but yeah, for the price,
I'm very happy that you said that because I remember when I saw the commercial and someone shared it on Facebook and like the first thing was like, "Oh, this is way better than a battery. Like, why would you recommend batteries?" And I was like, "That can't
it's
possibly work." But
yeah.
it sounds like it,
Oh
it
yeah,
might
it's
be an
really
option.
powerful. I think it's like 9 kilowatts of continuous power. Don't quote me.
Hmm.
But where a Tesla, well, where a Powerwall's 5. Um,
Wow.
so it does a lot of power. I think if you're in the market to buy a truck, anyways, and you have solar, because you're charging it from solar if you're charging it, during the day and it's producing enough to charge it. Um, I think it's a great option, especially
Hmm.
if we can start rolling it into the solar loans. Like, hey, we'll just buy that truck for you. You got your solar payment. It's still cheaper than PG&E, and it's your truck payment at the same time. Um, I don't know if
And
the
so
fans
now
would be
I'm
happy
thinking
about
about
that.
like I would assume the majority of people are
The
going to be
tax
charging it
credit on the
at
truck.
that would be awesome. Well, they already have the electric vehicle credit, right? But that's not nearly as cool as the
Yeah.
or as good as the home rebate or tax credit, not a rebate. Interesting. So I guess, but now I'm thinking now is so from an electric, I would assume most people are charging it at nighttime. So the perfect combo would probably be battery and a truck. But maybe you could have less storage if you have a
Yeah.
truck like that.
Yeah, less storage because and you wouldn't need as much power because typically when people need the extra power to run things, because let's say they have to have the air conditioning if their power goes out because they have some
Mhm.
medical issue where they have to have the house at a certain temperature. That's a big one that we see. I'd say we're able to. Most people won't go air conditioning once they see the cost of how many batteries it takes, except for people who are like literally like, no, I will have to go to the hospital if I don't keep my house at this certain temperature. But yeah, things like that, because you could have the smaller battery. It's like, hey, well, you plug in your truck when you need that air conditioning, when you need that extra, 9 kilowatts of power. Um,
Or you have
so
your truck charged, and then when when the power goes out, you'd be able to hook your truck in, right?
And
Would that
yeah,
work?
yeah, yeah. So you're still going to have an essential loads panel. The difference is the truck is not going to be automatic. Obviously, you're going to have to plug. That where the truck plugs in would go through a transfer switch, and that way it doesn't backfeed the grid. And during the outage, it can only feed the essential loads panel or be charged through the essential loads panel and then when it's on the transfer switch. So I imagine it'd be a manual transfer switch you'd have to install, throw that transfer switch, plug in the truck, and look at the capacity, man. All these when we're doing like a big battery, it's like 20, 30 kilowatt hours, maybe 40. Um, isn't it like 150 kilowatt hours or something, 120 in this thing? So it's like
I,
you have,
I, I
12
don't
unrated
remember.
batteries.
I remember that I saw the number and I was like, that can't be right. That's a
Yeah, yeah.
lot.
So you've got massive when you're talking about an outage, one of those extended outages. I mean, that truck's gonna, if you don't have to leave your house and deplete that truck battery driving it, um, geez, that thing's gonna last like 2 weeks. It's got like 120 kilowatt hours in it. If you only have a couple fridges and some lights, and you're only going through, 3 to 5 kilowatt hours a day, um, you're good for a very long time. So I think if somebody's buying a new truck, anyways, they like Fords. They're not anti-electric vehicles, which I think is stupid considering they're way more fast and powerful than these gearheads or whatever. It's like, no, I'll never get it. It's like, what? So you don't want a faster vehicle? Is that what you're saying? Um,
Well, I
so
think, I mean, part of that is just they weren't always faster, right? Like the
yeah,
first electric cars that came out, well, I guess what is it now, 30, 20 years ago or whatever, they were always everyone
the
thinks of
ones
the
that got all
Prius.
crushed, didn't they like take them back and like crush them all?
I know that there was, I mean, that's what Elon and Tesla really did that kind of like changed the game was they made electric vehicles cool. Like they made electric
Yeah,
vehicles that are not only like sleek and something you want to drive, but it's performs as well as you could hope. And
yeah,
but before that, a lot of people that maybe have their initial perceptions is the first time they saw a Prius and they're like, "Oh, that's a little toy."
yeah.
Um, and it
But
is interesting. But the
if
reason I think the
somebody's in the
truck is
market to buy
so
one, anyways, I'd say that's the
yeah.
truck to get if you're in an outage area, especially
Hmm.
extended outages, and that thing's gonna really, really come in handy.
It's going to be awesome. I mean, I think the reason that it's so attractive, and there's a few reasons why it's so attractive, but the biggest one is because, like we've talked about, I mean, batteries are expensive. They add a lot to the cost of solar. And so the reason that people are hesitant to get that is because it's something that they maybe the storage itself isn't justifying the cost. But then when you compare the cost to like a truck that people probably would want to get anyways, I mean, it's just kind of
Right?
a cool way that you can like when you make that comparison. I mean, out of like for example, Solar Pros, I bet you 9 out of 10 minimum would probably choose the truck over two batteries if they knew that the truck could do what we expect it to be able to.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
they're
then
coming out with,
also,
I've noticed too, and I don't know how it works or if it only works with certain models, but the EV chargers, they're coming out with
mhm.
bi-directional chargers from the actual charger. So maybe you can take
Hmm.
any electrical vehicle and go bi-directional with it, and you can use it to power your loads, which would be really
Hmm.
cool. Now, it kind of,
Especially if you have one of those where you can get solar, you can go charge your Tesla down at the for free. I don't know if I heard that's not available anymore, but I know it was for a long time
yeah, I
for
don't,
like the early
we have some
holders.
grocery
But
stores and stuff that have free charging.
you know, you go
Take it
charge
from
every
the
day at
grocery
work.
store.
You take it home and you like suck up all the electricity
Yeah,
into your house, and you can in a way not steal electricity. Well, it's kind of stealing, but it's a good type of stealing.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Fascinating, man. So, what is the reason that you think that, like, how is it possible, or what's the reason that the difference in pricing from like that truck and two home batteries are not as far off as you would think? Like, what is it that you would think is different about the truck's battery compared to the batteries that are for homes?
Yeah, I really don't because yeah, you're looking at these like a Tesla has one of their models I think has 120 kilowatt hours. Um, you look at doing 12 in phase batteries. I mean, our cost alone to buy those would be
More than the Tesla, probably.
about 75 grand just on the batteries. That's not including the multiple switches you would need. That's not including the labor. That's not so. Um, yeah, I don't know how they get those batteries so cheap in vehicles compared to home batteries. Because like an in-phase battery, for example, that's like $6,600, like $1,500 for the switch. There's like another part that's like $400. So you're looking at like $8,600 for 10 kilowatt hours.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know how I've wondered that a lot. Like, how is this 120 kilowatt hours plus a vehicle
And
for cheaper than if I just bought that many kilowatt hours of batteries?
Yeah, that is the interesting thing to really think about because like for like the way my first thought was like, oh, I mean that seems like a sweet like a no-brainer deal. Like if I was in the market and I was looking to get batteries, I would say no, I'm just going to hold off and buy the truck because then I
Yeah,
have the truck and I still have a lot of the majority of the benefits that I want batteries for. But it is interesting to see that because then when you start to think about it, it has to do something with the truck's ability to like regenerate while it's running.
yeah, and
I would
and
assume.
maybe, yeah, I don't know, because
I don't know, man. And I apologize for asking you questions that you're not qualified to answer,
oh
but I
no,
just
no, not at all.
you're
That's
the
something I've wondered too, for sure. Um,
it's it is just a fascinating thing because they uh,
I mean,
trucks
the
are
batteries
obviously
have, the batteries have inverters in them too, so that's got to be a big reason why.
hmm,
Because if you're looking at, let's say a battery system that costs, 10 grand, to the contractor, 10, 15 grand for me to buy all that equipment, it's
mhm.
about, only half of it's the battery. The other half's going to be your inverter and all the extra components it takes to install a battery. Um,
Mhm.
so really, it's, the total cost of battery, only about 50% of it are the batteries.
Hmm. Man, I just now I'm just like like I thought the truck was cool before, and I but in the back of my mind I was like, there's no way it probably works. But everything I've heard, it could work for that. It
Oh
might be
yeah,
an
yeah, it
interesting.
really does.
I think we have to maybe start a letter writing campaign or create a
Got to get the
petition, like
Fincos to allow
a
it.
change. Yeah,
Yeah, get the
get the
Fincos to
government
allow it in the loan, and that would be awesome.
if
Part of the
they
sales rep job,
imagine it.
go buy the truck and drive it over to the house.
No, well, imagine if it was an adder. You just click it. Oh,
Well,
I want
yeah,
a
that's
F-150. Boop.
yeah, put it in there.
No, but
Um,
see, I would want it to be like I always thought. I want eventually where the self-driving cars, they don't you don't need a sales rep. The truck just drives up to your house when you press the
yeah,
button or whatever. That'd be really cool. I think I saw like a comedian once or something that was talking about with like Teslas, like the automatic driving capabilities. Like imagine someone's leasing it and they just like don't make their payments and the truck just like drives itself to the back to the dealership
right.
or something.
That,
Like that'd be really
do
funny.
they do that, or
Or
they could? They could just drive it back or
they
set it off.
they could easily do that.
Yeah,
I mean, but it'd be obviously I think their whole self-driving stuff is where they ran into the nightmare of dealing with the government
yeah,
regulations and oversight and all that kind of stuff. Uh, I don't know. I think there's a lot of people probably that don't want self-driving cars because it does harm a lot of industries, even though it probably has a much bigger positive impact on a lot of industries as well. Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. This has been a lot. This is one of the few times I think that I'm talking to someone and you're like you talk about a lot of the technical and the science stuff. It's like over my head, which is completely different from like the marketing and
yeah.
sales aspect. But it's super important because I think it's probably the biggest area of uh, the biggest area of knowledge that solar pros need to improve upon is their knowledge about batteries, especially because as these
Yeah.
changes come
Batteries,
forward, batteries make sense for the majority of people,
and
right? Like
yeah, and
this,
just learning how electricity works, learning the difference between, volts, amps, watts, how to figure stuff out, how that basic kind of electrical 101 knowledge. Um,
now see, that's asking a little much from our solar sales bros that are out there. But regardless, I mean, I think I feel like one of the issues with batteries has been because in a way it's at the rep's discretion, where it's the a lot of people I have talked to, they don't sell batteries, or a lot of people I talk to, they sell batteries a lot, and there's nothing wrong with selling batteries a lot, but there's people that don't sell batteries just because they don't know or they feel like it makes their clothes harder, and
yeah,
that's not the right way to take care of the customer. So obviously, becoming more knowledgeable about and understanding how it works is going to be able to answer more questions that the customer has. Because I mean, if I was to like keep track of the questions that I get, I would say probably 50% are probably about stuff that's regarding the battery or the potential of a
yeah,
battery compared to the panels themselves. and
Sure.
it's super fascinating. So you obviously you're a busy guy. You're always on the you're doing a lot of stuff, and you're super knowledgeable. And it's I think I messaged you originally back in like last year or something, and I think I followed up. But and so not that I'm not I don't mean that like to be a bad thing. I just mean you're a busy guy, and but if anyone wanted to reach out to you or they had questions about batteries or they wanted to get your opinion or insight about something, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Just Facebook Messenger. You know, any question you guys have, hey, I'm looking into this, how to size it, or what brands do you recommend? We didn't get into like the differences in the batteries and this one's and all the spec sheets and stuff. But if you know they're all very different and they all have I don't have one favorite battery. It's I gotta talk to that person. I gotta see what they need, and way more so than solar, everyone is different, and everyone needs maybe the battery that's best for you would be the worst battery for your neighbor. Um, and so, yeah, reach out to me on Messenger, or I don't mind. People can text me. My phone number is 530-755-8668. Text me, don't call me. I'm so just I can just please, yeah, text me. I won't answer if you call. I get a. I think my partner put my name and phone number on like whatever goes out there for people trying to sell businesses stuff. I get like 70 million calls a day trying to sell loans to her, but so I just don't answer phone numbers I don't know, but I'll text you right back. Um,
Awesome, man. Well,
yeah,
that's really cool that you put your phone number out there. You're I did that once, and I remember I regretted it immediately. So
yeah.
I don't think you're gonna regret it.
I'm already
But
used to not answering phone numbers I don't know and getting my phone rings all the time, and I can handle like since we've been I have
yeah, well, the notifications that were going off.
yeah, that's I
That's the
36 text messages to get back to. So
that's a lot of text messages. Well, I think it's super cool that you help people understand. I think batteries are going to be. I think they're going to become. I think they're just going to become more and more important with all the changes that are going on. And
definitely. I mean, it's
for
going to be like
anyone,
Hawaii and California. California is going to be next. You can't do solar without a battery in Hawaii. California is
Mhm,
going to be next, and then other states, and then soon it will just be solar and a battery is how you do it.
mhm.
Getting a battery with your solar will be just as common as getting an inverter with your solar. You need it to have the whole system, and I really think eventually it's going to be like that, like it was in the beginning. When solar first, I think the first install was like in the 50s. You know,
Hmm.
you had to have a battery for so there was no such thing as net metering. That came way after batteries and
Well, it
solar.
was because the idea of solar and like like the savings used to be like an afterthought, and now the savings has become the
Yeah,
primary
of course.
focus.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, there is good reason for that because obviously, if someone's paying $500 a month to PG&E and they can save money with solar, like that's great. But at like solar and the independence aspect and the savings, it's kind of the same way we do marketing. The way marketing should be done is we should be marketing solar, and then the savings and stuff can be the like the cherry on top,
yeah,
compared to what we see on ads now is just savings, and not even only savings, but like we'll give you money, cash
yeah.
back. Which, if anyone thinks about it, they would just realize they're just paying more. But
Yeah.
regardless, man,
I
I
financed my own
appreciate.
rebate.
Yeah, the rebate, the check, cash back,
Yeah, yeah. I financed my
the
own
30
cash back.
30 36 months of paid solar payments.
Yeah.
So,
So
that used to just be called what, deferred payments, right? And
yeah,
but I mean, that's marketing. It's all about kind of presenting it and finding a way to take whatever it is you have to offer and put it into something that will get people to respond. And so, but on the battery side, it's more providing people with the independence and the freedom that I think solar was kind of initially created for, and then also the clean energy and green aspects that hopefully not only can we have all these benefits ourselves, but do our part for this world that we're on. Which the way it's going, I don't think we're ever going to have to worry about uh, I don't think we're ever gonna have to worry about like the apocalypse because it seems like the world's just getting crazier and crazier every year. I don't know how much longer we'll make it, but it's still fun. But when the world does go crazy, I'd be much happier if I had solar than if I didn't.
Yes, for sure.
With a battery.
With
With
the
a
battery.
battery.
Yeah, yeah.
But cool, man. Hey, thank you for your time. I'm going to put your
Thank you.
info in the description so anyone that watches will be able to reach out to you. And who knows, man? I'll probably collect some questions and maybe we'll do it again sometime because it
All right.
seems like you not only know a lot about batteries, but you actually enjoy talking about it, which
Yes.
is something
Constantly learning
that's
too.
very
So
cool. Cool, man. Well,
I'll
I am
hopefully know
a
more.
learner as well, and hopefully I'll someday learn 1/5 of what you know about batteries, and then
A
anyone
lot of
watching can
YouTube
be the
videos.
same. There you go, man.
All right.
Uh, Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
All right.
What's up, everybody? This is Kyle. Again, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Solar Growth Show. My hair, this is why I wear hats like every day because I like my hair long and it's always a mess. But I appreciate you guys watching this. While you're here, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, whatever you can do to support the channel and get future videos so that you can grow your solar business and your solar company, and we can continue to make this industry and this world a better place. So until next time, thank you and take care.